weekly edition of the Football Insomniac. My co-host, it's his first day out of isolation. He was just telling me, says it was absolutely worth it to see Scotland getting a point down at Wembley. Sean McGill, welcome once again. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. I'm just buzzing to be able to go outside again. Went for a haircut, just like actually seeing people, real life people, was pretty amazing. So it was definitely a good feeling. What about you?
I'm actually not too bad. It's been a long working week, but you know what? It's Friday, so lots to look forward to this weekend. A bumper weekend of football as well, and it's not far away from the season starting, which I'm sure we'll cover in the next couple of weeks. Definitely. But a big warm welcome to everyone who's joining us. We're live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter just now. We'll be joined later on by Adam from the UKRFUT24 podcast to discuss the underdog story that is Ukraine's progression to the last day of the Euros. And we'll also be joined by a State of Mind regular, Declan McConville, who will be taking on Sean later on in the quiz, as well as giving his predictions on how he thinks Euro 2020 will finish. But first of all, it is the biggest transfer of the summer so far. JADON SanchO has joined Manchester United for a fee rumoured to be around £73 million. The 21-year-old joins Manchester United from Borussia Dortmund, a former Manchester City Academy graduate. Sean, what's your thoughts on the transfer?
I think it's exciting. I think that it's been a while since United had a sort of player who could claim that right wing spot. It's kind of been a weak spot for them for a long time now. And JADON SanchO has to be one of the most exciting young players in foreign leagues, in top 5 European leagues. I mean, 21 years old, he's a constant goal threat. I mean, that's what you always see and all the sort of Twitter posts, wherever you, even when you watch him, you know that when he gets into a forward position, there's a good chance that something might happen. I mean, in his last two seasons, this season just passed, he got 16 goals and 20 assists in all contributions. It was 20 and 20 the season before, so those are pretty impressive numbers. And I think that a young player coming to one of the top clubs and having to prove himself, he being English as well, there'll be a lot of hype around him. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And because he's gone away from Manchester City to Dortmund, he backed on himself. He wanted game time, and he's got himself into a good Dortmund side who've been challenging towards the top of the Bundesliga for a couple of years. Maybe not so much this past season, but maybe part of that was down to JADON Sancho's injury troubles in the first half of the season. So I think it's a massively exciting move. Can it fire Man United to the title? I think they're still a way off Man City, and I expect Liverpool to be better this season. Chelsea probably come under that bracket as well, under Thomas Tuchel and on the back of the Champions League. So more needs to be done, I would say, at Manchester United, but JADON SanchO heading to Old Trafford is pretty exciting, I think.
So before we actually look at the move itself, let's take a look at how he progressed through Borussia Dortmund. As we said, he signed from Manchester City for a fee of around £8 million. As a 17-year-old, he was thrown straight into the first team. I think he made his debut less than 6 weeks after he joined the club. He's went on to make 137 appearances for the Black and Yellows, scoring 50 goals, which is a fantastic return rate, especially for what is essentially an attacking midfield player. 4 seasons there. He was the first Englishman to actually play for Borussia Dortmund. That was a really interesting stat. I thought there would have been others that had made it there. Obviously, the last Scotsman to play for Borussia Dortmund was Paul Lambert, and the interview with him for the Football Insomniac you can find on this channel. Nice wee plug in there.
Love that.
But the thing that led to his departure from Manchester City to Borussia Dortmund was the fact that his attitude at Man City was, even at 17, and when you look at the team that they had back then, which is still the likes of your Agueros and players like that, even Raheem Sterling getting in the squad, he believed in himself that he could be part of that first team. He wanted a guarantee that he would get game time, and he couldn't get it from Pep Guardiola. And that led to his transfer to Borussia Dortmund. What does that say about the character of this person? Does it mean that he was naive as a youngster, or has he shown in his time at Germany that he was absolutely right to do what he done?
Well, he was definitely right. I think there's no arguing that. I think, and it takes a lot of bravery to do that at such a young age. And particularly English, British players, I feel like there's less of a willingness to travel abroad. I mean, you see youngsters all about Europe sort of move about, but I mean, I remember being sort of a mainstay heading up to tournaments, that England would be the only country headed into a tournament where every single player would be from their domestic league. Obviously, when you've got, and Spain probably come close as well, but you still have lots of like talented Spaniards in the Premier League and stuff like that. But England would always be just players from the Premier League. And Jadon Sancho's bucked that trend and going to Germany and getting himself into the England squad. I think that's massively impressive. And I think you've got to commend that sort of bravery, especially at such a young age, to completely get out of your comfort zone, throw yourself into a new culture, new language, new league, everything. And Dortmund's a scary place to go. I mean, it's exciting, but those fans are demanding. They expect good football. They expect to be entertained, and they expect you to give your all, because if you're not giving your all for that club, they'll find you out pretty quickly. So Jadon Sancho doing that is certainly, I think, shows that he won't be fazed by this move to Man United. And like I said, there will be a lot of talk about Jadon Sancho, how he'll move if he doesn't hit the ground running. You can expect people to say, oh, he's going to flop and all that sort of stuff. But I think we've seen that he'll be able to overcome any sort of barrier like that. And I think you've got to commend him for his bravery and how he's performed on the pitch as well, because it's all well and good going out and doing it. The fact that he's been such an important player for Dortmund over the last 4 seasons, like you said, says a lot about him as a person and as a player.
I mean, it's interesting we mentioned the fact that he's part of that England squad coming from the Bundesliga. Now, for me, I think the Bundesliga is the best league in the world. I know a lot of people will say it's the English Premier League, but no, I generally think the Bundesliga is the best league in the world. It's certainly one of the most entertaining leagues in the world. But he's not really involved in this England squad, is he? I mean, I think looking at the stats, he's had 6 minutes of action in this whole tournament so far. And despite the progression that England have made, one of the things that always comes across is they're quite a negative side. They're a side that goes out there not to lose, not to go out and win and to entertain. So does he fit into Gareth Southgate's plans? Personally, I don't think he does. But where does he fit into Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's plans? Now, looking at the Man United team of last season, there was always an attacking option. You had Greenwood, you had Rashford, you had Cavani, even behind that, Pogba and Fernandes, or Fernandes, as you get to hear his name on FIFA. There's always some great attacking options. So where does Sancho come in there, and who is the player that unfortunately misses out for him to be accommodated?
I think it's got to be Mason Greenwood, but more in the sense that he will deputise for Edinson Cavani in that centre-forward area. That's what Mason Greenwood is. He's a striker, and he's been playing on that right-hand side to pretty good effect. I think he's a really exciting player, but you see the way he strikes a ball is the most impressive thing about Mason Greenwood. He's a great finisher. The fact that he can learn from a player such as Edinson Cavani, who his movement is so good, and he's sort of like an old-school striker in the sense that the penalty box is really his domain. And so I think that's the plan there. I mean, the other options on the right, you've got Dan James, who's never really made much of a mark on this Man United side. And I'm not sure, I mean, Man United should be going for the title because they're Man United. I'm not sure he's quite that calibre of player, Dan James. Still pretty young, so that could change. And you've got Diallo as well, who's a highly rated youngster, but he's not ready for the first team yet either. So I think that Sancho on that right-hand side will be the plan for Solskjaer.
It's interesting that you mentioned Dan James. Now, he was one that, if anyone saw the Leeds documentary, he was actually meant to be going to Leeds. They had just about done a deal for him. He's a Leeds fan, and everyone knows the Leeds-Manchester United rivalry. And then at the last minute, the deal didn't go through, and 6 months later, he joins Manchester United. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to him. I think he's had a fantastic Euros as well for Wales. Dan James, I think he's been one of their better players. So if he is the one to miss out, what do they do with him? Does he go out on loan? Is it someone that they look to move on? What kind of fee would they get for him? I think when you look at it, to spend £73 million, and it looks as if their spending isn't done because they're also looking at trying to bring in Rafael Varane, there is going to have to be some players that move out, and Dan James could unfortunately be one of those casualties.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, United are going to be challenging on a lot of fronts, so you might expect them to. They're going to want to have a big squad, but there's a lot of options on that right-hand side. And it's funny that you mentioned Varane as well, because I think when we're talking about can Sancho carry Man United to the title, he can if United make the right signings in other areas as well. I mean, I think there's no doubt about it. Harry Maguire needs a defensive partner in there. And I know Harry Maguire gets a lot of stick, but I think we saw in the game on Tuesday that he is still a very accomplished defender. And he's maybe liable to make a mistake, but I think that with a solid defensive partner, and there's no doubt about it, Rafa Varane would be that. I think you'd see the best out of Harry Maguire as well. And they need to sort out that midfield area, because what happens to Paul Pogba? He's been the best player at the Euros so far, but we haven't seen him replicate that in the Man United shirt. If you're going to give him the licence that he needs and maybe sort of almost replicate that midfield that Manchester City had with Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva as both creative players, and then a Fernandinho type behind. And I love Scott McTominay. He isn't that player. I think Fred is actually a better footballer than he gets credit for, but he's not that player either. Nemanja Matic was that player, but he's sort of beyond it now. So I think if you're going to get the best out of Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, you need to sign a proper out-and-out six as well. So Sancho is a piece of the puzzle, and I think there's no question about it, he improves Man United. But to bridge that gap to those top contenders, like I was saying, City and Liverpool and Chelsea, I'd probably have them fourth just now. I think those teams are going to be better than them next season. So more needs to be done, and we know that the financial situation isn't the best for clubs at the moment. So it might be a tough one, but if United can capitalise on other clubs' sort of financial situations and pounce on these players, then maybe it could make a difference.
I mean, the question to be asked is, what will be a success for Jadon Sancho at Manchester United? You mentioned they look as if they won't be title contenders. I do think there is still work that needs to be done there, and I think the signing of Rafael Varane will also be another key part of that puzzle, because I think they are quite weak at the back. I also do think that they have to work out their number one goalkeeper situation, whether it's going to be David De Gea or whether it's going to be Henderson, and who they choose for that going forward. But the last time I remember Manchester United spending this kind of money on a forward player, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be Anthony Martial. Now, spending £50 million on someone like that, and he's not even been mentioned there. So what does the future hold for someone like that? Is this now the time that Manchester United admit defeat and say that it's time to move him on and see how much they can get back for him?
Yeah, I'm not even going to lie. Martial could slip my mind completely. And I guess that's kind of it reflects a lot on his Man United career. I mean, he hasn't managed to make a real impact, but I mean, I think his numbers are actually better than Marcus Rashford's. You look at his Man United career, sort of goals per game and assists per game and stuff like that. So it's a tough one for him, because him and Rashford, there's always been questions about whether they're wingers or whether they're strikers. I mean, and they've both sort of dovetailed and done a bit of both, and perhaps not being settled in that one position has hampered them both a bit. Martial was injured for a bit of last season, wasn't he? So it'll be interesting to see how he fits in once he's back to full strength. But we're sort of piling on the attacking options here at Man United, and that must be exciting for United fans and a sort of good headache for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to have. But players like that aren't going to be happy with limited game time. They all demand a good amount of game time. And Sancho's still young. He's only 21. I think we think he's older because he's been around for so long. But he because of what he's done at Borussia Dortmund, he'll command a lot of game time as well. When you spend that type of money, you don't expect to keep him on the bench. I mean, Donny van de Beek as well. I mean, he's an attacking midfielder. He can sit a bit deeper, but I think United seem to want to use him in a forward area as well. But we've got Pogba and Fernandes who sort of occupy those spaces as well. Juan Mata was given a contract extension today as well. So, I mean, you do sort of think that not even just financially, but also in terms of having a sort of harmonious squad, that they are going to have to start making some clear-outs. And I would say Anthony Martial and Dan James are probably the ones where you command a bit of a fee because they're still young, they're prospects, still they also have some pedigree in the game. And also they're the ones who I think are likely to miss out.
It's probably a manager's sort of ideal nightmare to have too many good players to try and sort of keep happy. But yeah,
it's for Southgate, isn't it? At England, I mean, it's mental the fact that Mason Mount, Jack Grealish, and Phil Foden and Jadon Sancho were all on the bench on that game against Germany.
Jude Bellingham as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that with people who aren't too sure how good Jadon Sancho is, fans in Germany are genuinely baffled at the fact he can't get into that England side. Like it's not just, oh, that's a bit strange. They can't believe it that he's not starting for that England side. And I think it was a Jurgen Klinsmann column where he said the number one player he feared before the game on Tuesday was Jadon Sancho, who didn't even get on the pitch. And that might not look great in hindsight, considering England were the better team and they got through fairly comfortably in the end. But the fact that he's held in such high regard by fans who watch him week in and week out shows that he's a player who, like we're sort of talking about, has to start for Manchester United next season, and it leaves all these other players in a weird situation.
Well, here's a question to you on that. How much of that do you think is actually down to Jadon Sancho himself and his performances in the England training camp, and how much of that's actually down to the attitude that the sort of English fans and the English media give towards any other league apart from the English Premier League? I mean, I reckon now that when Sancho signs for Manchester United, if he played the same amount of games as what he played when he was at Borussia Dortmund last year, he would be one of the first names in that England team sheet. But the fact that he's coming from Borussia Dortmund, it's almost as if, oh, well, he's still young. He's not got that experience. He definitely has.
Yeah, and that's what Gareth Southgate said about Jadon Sancho as well, that you need to manage these young players who haven't had too many international minutes carefully. But that's not been his attitude towards Phil Foden, and it's not been his attitude towards Bukayo Saka since he got into the team either. So I think there is something in that. And when you were talking earlier about the Bundesliga being the best league in the world, that comes with the fact that it's so entertaining, like you said, and there are so many goals scored, and there's no doubt about it. That's because of this high-tempo football where defending probably isn't the priority. So I think you're going to get people looking at Jadon Sancho and his very impressive numbers, and sort of a lot of people will sort of put an asterisk next to it and saying, yeah, but it's the Bundesliga where defending isn't of the same standard as the Premier League. And I think that's fair, but also you need to sort of, the people who, like I said, the people who are watching him week in, week out speak so highly of him. And I think that there's no reason why he can't replicate those numbers in the Premier League. But it's a shame, I think, that it's got to take that to sort of reach those heights. I mean, it's the same in Scotland as well with Ryan Gauld, isn't it? I mean, if Ryan Gauld was putting in those sort of numbers and those sort of talismanic performances for a team in the English Championship or in the Premiership, it would have been in the Scotland squad. And I don't like that sort of out of sight, out of mind type attitude. I think in the modern era, when you've got availability to so many games, that players should be given a fair chance. And yeah, you've got to take the strength of leagues into account, but I mean, the Portuguese league is a better league than the Scottish Premiership, probably. I mean, I'm an advocate of Scottish football. I love Scottish football. If you look at the players in it and the way that the money in it and the way that it's ranked, I don't think there's too much of a doubt about that. And I mean, one-off games, yeah, Rangers could beat Porto and Benfica and stuff like that. I think that's a different argument. And so look at the strength of the league overall. So I think that it's not a good attitude. I don't enjoy that the attitude's there, and that's talking about Jadon Sancho and the fact that he's in a foreign league and he perhaps isn't in the manager's thinking as much, but it does exist. I don't think you can ignore that, and it's a shame though, because I feel like it sort of disheartens other players from going abroad. Because I mean, Kieran Trippier has just won the league with Atletico, doing a great season. And yes, they're sort of blessed for options at right back, but if he just won the league and put in those performances in the Premier League, I think he'd be starting ahead of Kyle Walker. Obviously, he did play wing back on Tuesday, but I think they'll go back to a back four, and I think that Kyle Walker will probably be the player put in there. So the attitude definitely exists, but I'd want rid of it.
So just to kind of wrap this segment up, and I'm just going to bring in a comment here from Robert Baker. Coming in to say, down south they say Bundesliga is a two-horse race, but it really isn't true. That's correct. I mean, Dortmund finished 4th last year, so I mean that's finishing 4th in a two-horse race. That's a bit of an understatement. But just to wrap this up, how many goals and assists do you reckon Sancho gets for United next season?
Good question. There'll be teething problems probably. I mean, I feel like the pressure on him might slow him down for a bit, but I hope he gets going. Just because when you're a talented player, I don't want that sort of snobbery towards the Bundesliga to be like, oh well, he did it there, but he didn't do it in the Premier League. So I'd like to think that he's going to have a decent season. So let's say sort of 10 to 15 in both. I'm confident.
At least you've not got that old, can he do it on a wet Tuesday night in Stoke? because Stoke aren't in the Premier League next season. I think he'll do well. I can see 15 goals, 15 assists. I think United will be a top 4 team next season. It's still currently Switzerland 0, Spain 1 in tonight's Euro 2020 quarter-final. We will be speaking more Euro 2020 shortly, but another bit of big news that took place down south last week was Rafa Benitez being appointed as the Everton manager. Now, this is former Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez, who has crossed the Mersey divide to join the Toffees. Now, let's take the fact that he managed Liverpool out of the equation here just for a minute, just out of the context. He's managed Valencia, Chelsea, Real Madrid, Napoli, Inter Milan, Newcastle. He's won a Champions League, he's won 2 UEFA Cups, he's won an FA Cup, he's won a lot of trophies across his career. You take out the fact that he was a Liverpool manager, and that is actually a really good appointment for Everton.
I mean, I think I saw some tweets about it. Imagine telling Everton fans however many years ago that back-to-back they were going to have Carlo Ancelotti and Rafa Benitez as the
exactly. And then the former manager, Marco Silva, is now the Fulham manager.
I know.
It's
a really weird time at that club because they're trying to push themselves into the sort of elite of English football and doing a pretty rotten job of it so far. I mean, you can see that in the ambition they have and these appointments and the signings of players like James Rodriguez. But they're just not. I mean, they finished 10th last season. I think for the
behind that Arsenal team that were absolutely shocking.
I mean, newly promoted Leeds, and Leeds are a great side with a great manager. But the fact that a team in their first season in the Premier League finished above Everton, have spent so much money over the past few years, I think says a lot. And I think Rafa Benitez is a funny one to get because, like you said, his CV is pretty exciting, but he's a pragmatist. He doesn't play the most exciting football. I think we saw that at his time at Newcastle, and people say he was just had to sort of get the most out of the sum of its part. I mean, that was a championship squad in the Premier League, and I think that's fair. Yeah. He did probably, he was forced a bit to play such negative football, but he's always been a cautious manager, and I think that Everton fans, with the players they're signing and the direction they want the club to go, I think we'd be looking for a more sort of exciting brand of football. We spoke about it with Spurs as well. I think fans crave that a lot more than they used to. But the number one factor will be results, of course.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, they finished 10th last season. I think they're a team that sees themselves playing in Europe. You look at it, they're building a new stadium. I think it's a 52,000-seater stadium that they're looking to build. So they have ambitions of being a team that competes in Europe season after season, and I don't think they'd settle for the Conference League, if I'm being honest. I see them being a Europa League team or above, but let's get down to the fact that Rafa Benitez managed the team that's literally about 2 or 3 miles away from Goodison Park at Liverpool. He was there for 7 years between 2004 and 2010, winning the Champions League, coming runner-up, I think it was the season or 2 seasons after, won an FA Cup, won the Club World Cup. How could you cross the divide like that? Like, is the Mersey derby as big as any other derby? Now, I know they say it's the friendly one. You see some Everton fans in Anfield and the home end and vice versa. But a derby's a derby. Surely this is one of them ones you just don't cross. It's almost becoming like Inter AC, where if you play for AC, a couple of years later you'll play for Inter as well.
It's a funny one, isn't it? And you've got, I guess there's kind of like a hierarchy of football rivalries, I guess. I mean, we're going to stick close to home. It wouldn't happen between Celtic and Rangers. I mean,
no. Look at the abuse Kenny Miller got. Look at the abuse Kenny Miller got.
Exactly. Players, there's a very, very limited number of players who've done it. But like, and as a manager of great success, I mean, Rafa Benitez is a club legend at Liverpool. Yeah. And he's now the Everton manager, and he's called Everton a small club in the past in his interviews.
He's not wrong. I'm kidding. Sorry, any Toffees watching.
I'm moving about here. My screen's gone. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still there.
So, I mean, and even United Liverpool, you wouldn't expect it to happen, but I mean, Jose Mourinho's gone from Chelsea to Tottenham. Even, I mean, there's no love lost between Newcastle and Sunderland, but Steve Bruce has done that. And fans were unhappy, and fans are unhappy about Rafa Benitez. But I think clubs know that you can ride out the storm a lot of the time. I think they know that it's all about results. I mean, if he does well, I mean, but Mourinho and Bruce probably aren't the best examples because they're still not that popular. But I don't think that's anything to do with the fact that they've previously managed the club's rivals. I think Tottenham fans hated the style of football, and I think that the same can be said for Newcastle fans. Yes, they probably got a bit better in the second half of last season, but I don't think
Just to interrupt you, Sean, there's been a goal in the game between Switzerland and Spain. It is now Switzerland 1, Spain 1.
Ooh, who scored?
It's still coming through. Still coming through on the app.
They don't give up, this Swiss team, do they?
They've really impressed me. That comeback against France the other night was outstanding. But getting back to Benitez, at the point that you're making about crossing the divide, I mean, he's already receiving abuse from Everton fans. I mean, you call it abuse. It was very, please do not sign for us abuse. It wasn't like stuff getting thrown at his house or anything like that. Shaqiri scored the goal for Switzerland, by the way. But if you're not welcome at a club, is that not a sign that your tenure's really not going to go well?
He has to make it go well, that's the thing. But it is, like you said, it is already off to a bad start. It's not ideal at all, is it? And he'll have to prove himself, and he'll have to hit the ground running, or that I think it's just going to be a really toxic atmosphere. But it's interesting to sort of think how much of a club legend you have to be somewhere to not cross the divide, or which rivalries are just a complete no-go. I mean, Celtic fans were up in arms about Kevin Muscat the other week, weren't they? When he was rumoured to be, he played 5 times for Rangers or something. Yeah. what were you on that? Were you?
I didn't really fuss me that much, but I could understand the frustration.
It's just interesting to think I'm a Kilmarnock fan. Our rivals are Ayr, but we loaned a striker to Ayr last season. It's not, there is levels of it. As much as you never want to think your rivalry's tin pot or anything less. On Derby Day, I can't wait for derbies this season because it's been a long time. But on Derby Day, that's the most important thing, is beating your rivals and getting bragging rights. But you've got to be aware that it's not the most fierce rivalry. So I guess, yes, there's probably a limited number of derbies these days, rivalries, where you're thinking that people won't do that. And I think that comment's really good there from Robert Baker, that money is the driving factor. And there's not many clubs in England where Rafa Benitez, he's not going to get a big six job, Rafa Benitez. No. So looking just below that, it's your Evertons, it's your West Hams, and Everton have got money to back him and to line his pocket as well. So, he's been waiting. He went to China and he's been waiting for a Premier League job. That's been that was the things when he was linked to Celtic as well, wasn't it? That he definitely wants a Premier League job, and he's got a pretty decent one. So, in that sense, you can't fault him. I don't really expect people to have that sort of moral compass of saying, I'm not being Everton manager because I'm a Liverpool. I just don't expect that these days. And I think money is the driving factor behind that.
I'll give you an insight. So I was on the Anfield Stadium tour a couple of weeks ago. And as part of the tour, if anyone who has been in, you'll see when you go round, they've got this sort of, it's almost like a pull down curtain, and on the curtain is all these pictures of different managers that have had through the past. So you've got Shankly, and you've got and it goes right through to the current day, and they've got one of Rafa Benitez, and the stadium tour guy that was doing it with me, he's like, he is a legend. That guy is a legend. That guy can do no wrong. I'd love to go back down and ask him what he thinks now, because I'm sure his opinion would have changed by then. But as you said, money talks. He was always looking for a Premier League club. Does he have any loyalty to Liverpool to turn them down? I don't think so, but he's going to have to answer that small club question, I think, at his first press conference. That one will be very interesting to watch. Also been very interesting to watch has been the Euros. Sean, you've done a State of Euros podcast that you can find on here on A State of Mind. And before the tournament begun, actually on the day the tournament begun, we actually got some people to come in from different podcasts representing their home countries, or their adopted home countries, we must say, to give their predictions of how the tournament went. One of those was this man here. Adam Pate, welcome back to the Football Insomniac. You were here representing Ukraine, and safe to say they're still in the tournament.
Oh yeah, guys! Thanks for having us back. First of all, it's an unbelievable tournament. It really is. We're absolutely buzzing out here. Hoping we can do Scotland proud tomorrow night.
I believe I talk for all Scots, with the exception of maybe Nicola Sturgeon after our comments the other day. But we are all Ukrainian from now until the end of that game on Saturday night. First of all, since we last spoke, Adam, you've been doing the rounds. I've seen and heard your voice numerous times. What's it been like?
I tell you guys, the last sort of 3 days have been absolutely manic. I've never known anything quite like it. It must have been from about 9 o'clock Wednesday morning. The phone's been going off non-stop, and you're like, everybody wants to talk to you. I've got to say, we're pretty lucky being quite unique, being English people who report on Ukrainian football. We're on a...
You've got a real niche there. You've got a real
niche. We
really
have. You know, we're an option of like 2, and that's it. So, well, it was. I think we heard that the number, my phone number, went in the BBC database, and then before we knew it, we had like every single radio station around the country calling us up. And this morning, I was on 14 different local radios in about 2 hours, just constant bang, 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 bang. It was manic, but great fun. I'm not going to lie. It's what we all do it for, isn't it? Being, podcasters, having our shows and that. We do it for moments like this, and it's great to do Ukraine proud going into, as we've had such a historic tournament in the country.
Yeah, it's been the best performance by a Ukrainian side at any tournament, Sean. Have you been impressed by them so far?
Yeah, I have been. And Adam, you've got to talk us through that win at Hampden because it was dramatic, wasn't it? And I'm sure your nerves were shot. And after all that extra time and having the man advantage, and you thought it's going to go to penalties, and when you've had that advantage, it almost seems written in the stars that the other team will win the penalty shootout. So to grab it so late on with a great header, a great crossing header, and the fans were absolutely fantastic. There wasn't a lot of them, but they were loud inside Hampden Park. So talk us through your emotions that night.
Oh, it was just a crazy night. For a few days before, we were really hoping it was going to be England, Ukraine. So the first part of the job was done. England were through. And beforehand, optimism wasn't the highest. We'd been poor during the groups, and it was like, okay, what's gonna happen? It's going to be tough to get through. We saw the lineup, we saw the change in formation, and it was kind of, well, let's see how this goes. We could be in for a long night. It looked like we were going to go for penalties. I thought maybe 0-0 after 120 minutes. I'd actually text my brothers in England to say, I apologise in advance for how good this team's going to be. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I was amazed then. We started to attack as much as possible. We saw the goal in the first half. Zinchenko, expert finish. He was the standout player in the game for me. He was absolutely superb. I was saying earlier today, it was Manchester City-esque performance that he put in for the first time in the tournament. But Sweden were the stronger team. I've got to put my hand on heart. They were a lot stronger. They had the better chances. They deserved their equaliser. The second half, we showed our typical, it was kind of just tired performance. But Sidorchuk chance where we hit the post was the one moment. But we were hanging on. And I was nervous. I was like, can we get through? Can we get through? But the red card, deserved. And it was like optimism again. Can we score?
Adam, your timing could not have been any better. We do have a live update to bring you from Spain, Switzerland. Switzerland are now down to 10 men. It is a red card for Freuler. He's been sent off for a wild lunge. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Wow. That's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt. Where are they in St. Petersburg?
Yeah.
Oh, it's quite hot up there, I think, at the moment as well. That's gonna hit them. That's gonna hit them being with 10 men in that game. It's tough playing these games so quickly after a tough season. I think losing a man in this tournament is hurting teams a lot more than they would have done regularly. And you saw it with Sweden. They were clinging on, absolutely clinging on. I was settled for penalties. I've got to disagree with you. I was quite confident going into penalties. You know, you mentioned that Ukraine's previous sort of tournament history, 2006, the second round game, went to penalties against Switzerland. Switzerland didn't score one. We won 3-0, got to the quarterfinals in the penalties. So we've got that history with penalties. Bouchan's proven quite a good penalty shot stopper. He'd saved the one against North Macedonia in the group stage.
Yeah, that was a great save, that one, actually. Very good save.
You know, but Dovbyk, it was, I mean, what a dream for him. You know, he's been given a half in one of the pre-tournament warm-ups. That's it. First season back in Ukraine after a couple of poor seasons in Denmark, and scored a few goals, but not that great in a mid-table Dnipro team. Comes off the bench and bang, gets a winner in his first few minutes of European football.
That's bonkers.
Proper Roy of the Rovers stuff. It really was. And we were still struggling. I mean, I'm still struggling now to recover from it. So I think a lot of people are. The celebrations were immense around Kiev on Wednesday morning, just non-stop. When I got to Kiev later on in Wednesday, the town was deserted. I think everybody was sleeping off the hangovers straight, you know, all day Wednesday.
Absolutely jealous.
We're hoping it's going to be even worse on Sunday, you know.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And when you talk about that goal from Zinchenko, it was a great finish, but there's so much to like about that goal. I mean, the big switch and then that cross from Yarmolenko. I mean, who would think to do that in that situation? Does that speak to the sort of the style of Ukrainian football and how technically proficient it can be, and perhaps what can trouble England?
It can. Very, very right. Very right. The technical skill of the players is really, really impressive. Perhaps they lack a bit of sort of tactical know-how right at that top level of the game, but technically absolutely superb. There was clear strategies to attack down the wings. So, you know, looking to create space on the opposing wing. Karavayev on the right had another outstanding game, and he's much more suited to being a right wing back as well. Got to give him a big shout out. He's going to be a huge threat against England tomorrow. But it's just about creating that space. And in the World Cup qualifiers in March, we weren't exploiting it. But on that game with Zinchenko there instead of Mikolenko, it just seemed a lot more professional. It was as, you know, they were prepared for it. Zinchenko, a few days before, had come out in one of the press conferences and said, I apologise to everyone back home for the performance in the group stage. We're now going to give you something to be proud of. And like you say, the football on show was quality, and both the goals were outstanding. I thought the cross from Zinchenko for the second one was world class as well.
Let's speak about that game tomorrow night. Obviously, we are all now Ukrainian leading up to it. But what do you think the chances are for Ukraine against England? I mean, this is an England side that haven't conceded a goal so far this tournament. We've always said that their kind of weakness has been in their back line, but we've not been able to see that yet. What can Ukraine do differently that other teams haven't been able to do so far and get that victory?
I mean, I think the big thing in knockout stages in particular is to not concede. And England, you know, I've been reading in the press, they've almost written off this game already as a guaranteed win for them. And the longer it stays 0-0, the more the pressure is going to be on those guys. You can't be in the England national team and not feel the pressure. It's absolutely immense in the country. If they don't win, it's almost like it's not worth coming home. It's really won't be for them.
It's not coming home. Don't worry, it's not coming home.
It's heading east. It's heading east. And but you know, I'm pretty certain we're going to see almost a back line of 7 for the majority of the game there, with Shaparenko sort of shimmying the ball up to Yarmolenko up front. But you're going to see a really, really defensive wall that we're going to invite England to break down. And it's going to be if England can do it. If it's 0-0 after 120 minutes, it won't surprise me. But Ukraine have got the ability to counter-attack. We saw it in the Sweden game quite clearly. We saw it in the Holland game, the 2 goals against the Dutch. And when we went to Paris in March, we drew 1-1 and we had about 20% of the possession. They've got, as you said, the technical players to make a goal from nothing. And this time around, with Yarmolenko back in the squad, Malinovsky's likely to start the game on the bench. And what a great talent to still be able to bring on in the last 20 minutes. One, if you're chasing a goal, and two, if you're looking to sneak a late winner. I mean, what a brilliant player to come on, a real finisher, as somebody quoted to me earlier today.
And Sean, this is England's first game away from Wembley. Do you think that will have a compelling sort of impact on them? And as we've seen today, it seems as though all the officials on Saturday night will be German. So, yes. I mean, not to play devil's advocate there, but there's a combination of factors here that the English tabloids can already start using as their excuse.
Imagine the meltdown if there's a dodgy VAR decision or something like that. It would be pretty spectacular to watch. It's an interesting one on England not being at home, because it'll be the first time they've travelled away from St George's Park. I mean, even when a tournament's in one country, you're usually moving from city to city. They've been going to the same stadium for every game, making the same journey. It's been a very, very comfortable for that England side so far. So I think that will be interesting to look at. But also, like Adam was saying there, the pressure on this game, and I think at Wembley, if it kept being 0-0 for a long time, that Wembley atmosphere might have just got into the players' heads a bit more. I don't expect them to be a big England contingent in Rome. I mean, they've been told very harshly that to sort of stay away from Rome if you've been to England in the last 14 days. So I can't see, unless you're sort of an Englishman or woman in Rome, then you're not going to be there, I don't think. So there's kind of two sides to it, but big questions will be asked if they don't pull off a performance. And I think people will say that why were you so comfortable at Wembley against a pretty, I mean, Germany were poor, but of course it's still Germany, and they couldn't do it against Ukraine and Rome. So there is that factor, there's those question marks around it, so it'll be interesting to see.
Can I just add in there real quickly? We've got our co-host in Rome now, and he said it's about 10 degrees warmer in Rome than it is in London. He flew from London today. As part of the journalist contingent, that heat is going to have a huge impact. And Ukraine were in Bucharest, obviously, for their Greek matches, where the climate was very similar.
And I mean, it's not necessarily been cold here in the UK. It's been fairly warm, but even just 5-10 degrees of a difference, that can have a real sapping effect on the legs. So it's a game I'm really looking forward to. The yellow and blue will be flying here, and we'll all be back in the Ukrainians. Stick Zinchenko on to score at any time. But we're just about to be joined by Declan McConville to look through the other quarterfinals. But before we do, Adam, we can't let you go without getting a prediction off you.
Thanks, guys. I'm going for 0-0. Ukraine through on penalties and more penalty hurt for England.
Oh, that would just be would be sweet. We'll go with that. Adam, right. Thank you very much for joining us. All the best for Saturday night, and who knows, maybe we'll get you on for the semi-final or even the final if Ukraine can get that far.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Cheers, guys.
Thanks once again. I tell you what, it has been the underdog story between that and the Czech Republic, and that could be the semi-final. I'm telling you, ranked 40th, ranked 24th. It's the joy of the Euros. I have absolutely loved this tournament. Declan, have you loved this tournament?
Absolutely loved it. All right, boys, how you doing?
Good,
Welcome to the show. Declan McConville is the host of the State of Politics podcast along with Patrick McGilp, and you see him on A Celtic State of Mind on a Thursday. Declan, thank you very much. This is your Insomniac debut. It's not like Soccer AM. We don't give out a ball. We've not got the budget for that just yet, but thank you for joining us.
No worries, mate. I'm glad to jump on. But it's the first time I've been on my show as well, so nice to meet him. And always up for a chat about football, so I just thought my invite had been missing in the post a few weeks ago.
You're always welcome on here, Declan. Don't take me on the politics show, but because I know absolutely nothing. But knowing absolutely nothing, I would have said that Spain would have been one of the favourites now that they are. Switzerland are down to 10 men, but it does look as if that game is going to extra time. Before the game, Sean, what did you think? I mean, Spain, they came through the extra time game against Croatia, the game that we both predicted would be the tie of the round, finishing 5-3. you're starting to think that they're getting into a bit of the rhythm here, and it's what you need when you get into the knockout stages. You just need to keep that going, and who knows, they might have taken home the trophy.
Yeah, it's two guys who know their stuff, isn't it? Calling that the tie around.
I mean, it's not a chance. It could have just been luck, but yeah, okay.
No, definitely not. No, but I think everyone thought Spain were favourites, and despite the fact that Switzerland put in that great performance against France, I think especially, they both obviously had long games on Monday, but I think Spain's style of football, where they're possession based, I think that they could just tire that Swiss team out, who had to put so much effort into that game, and even emotionally, the fact that they won it still must have been pretty draining, going through those penalties and the celebrations, and I imagine the media frenzy's been pretty big, considering they've knocked out the world champions. So and reached their first quarter final in a very, very long time as well. So I thought Spain would have too much, and they still might. And extra time might be where the tiredness levels kick in, and Spain managed to get another couple of goals. But we wrote off a Switzerland team too early against France as well, didn't we? They're technically a very good side, and a side who've been playing together for a long, long time, which I think counts for a lot in knockout football. So I wouldn't be surprised if Switzerland managed to eke it out, because they've got that fighting spirit, but down to 10 men, no Xhaka because of injury, it's going to be tough.
And Shaqiri's also been taken off, I'm just seeing here as well. But Declan, let's talk about Sheridan Shaqiri. He's someone who blows very hot and cold in club football, struggles to get some game time at Liverpool. They loaned him out for the second half of last season. But yet when he turns up at the tournaments, he always seems to be Switzerland's star man. What is it that means that you can go from being the kind of bit part player at your club to the star man for your country?
Yeah, it's something I would say that Scotland probably lacks at the moment as well. It's just that, we've got two world-class fullbacks and Andrew Robertson and KT, but, a lot of the teams that you're down to the last have all got that one man that can really turn it on and drag you through a game, and he's one of those guys. I remember when he played against us at Celtic Park for Inter Milan, and I thought it was brilliant that night. He's always been a quality player. Thought the move to Stoke was a bit weird at the time. You see his quality able to go into that Liverpool side and be part of the team that wins the league. But yeah, it's very strange how you can kind of go from that bit part player at club football, a very good level, of course, at Liverpool in the Premier League, but then when it comes to the international stage, really be the main man. But I've got it on in the background here, and I was quite, I was a bit weird to see him go off, because you would have thought that would have been the guy that they'd been wanted to keep the pitch. The other guy I've been impressed with up top for Switzerland's Mbolo. I think he's been excellent this tournament. First game against Wales, was really, really impressed by him.
Yeah, they were unfortunate to lose him very early on in this game to injury after, I think it was about 20 odd minutes. It looks if it's going to extra time. Is it confirmed it's in extra time now? I know they're playing additional time. 4 minutes added on. So yeah, if that goes to extra time, I think Spain's a team that can get their foot behind it, pass the ball about, tire them out, and I fancy Spain to get through that tie. What's your thoughts, boys?
Yeah, I think I probably agree with you, but if it goes to penalties, Spain have missed their last 5 penalties, not including penalty shootouts. So, and that, this tournament already, Morata's missed a penalty and Gerard Moreno, so it's going to be nervy, and that's going to be in the players' heads. And Switzerland, of course, won a penalty shootout just a few days ago, so their confidence in that will be high, and some great penalties in that one. So if Switzerland can hold on to penalties, then I'd probably favour them, but I do think that gaps will start to open up in the second in extra time, and Spain can make the most of it.
What do you think, Declan?
Yeah, I think the other night, Colin, when Switzerland took France to extra time and then penalties, did that wee bit of a kick, getting those late goals, which I think they kind of bounced off the momentum. Even if they were tired, they just had that bit of lift for the last half an hour. So this game's been a bit different. Obviously, they're down to 10 men. You said earlier that Spain play possession-based football. That probably, if they do move the ball around as they do, they will eventually probably break the Swiss team down, and having 10 men won't help Switzerland. But there's still a few minutes to go, so it could still take another wee turn.
And we'll keep you updated if anything does happen in that game. We'll either see Declan's reaction or I'll see it here on my phone. Let's look to the big game tonight, though. Italy versus Belgium. Probably the tie of the round when you look at it on paper. Belgium, a side who, they say this is the golden generation. They say this is the last big chance for them to actually do something. And Italy, another team who just about got through in the end. but a team who'd been impressive right up until then. So I don't know how this one's going to go. I think this could be another extra time penalties effort.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're pretty evenly matched. I don't think, despite Italy being probably the most impressive side in the group stages, I think they're the two most consistent teams so far at the tournament. And I think that I couldn't see anyone really having a strong opinion on who would go through this one. And obviously Belgium are missing two of their key players, in Kevin De Bruyne and Eden Hazard. I think we're still waiting for team lines. I don't know if we've got them already.
No, not yet. No,
we might get them soon. But Italy obviously stuttered a bit against Austria. Belgium, I thought, put in a really sort of professional performance against Portugal. I was really, really impressed with the way that Thomas Vermaelen, who has never really been a sort of highly appreciated player wherever he's been, despite playing for Arsenal and Barcelona. But I think I was reading an article that said he's not even been very good in Japan recently. But the way he marshalled Cristiano Ronaldo in that game was really, really impressive, I thought. It just didn't give him any time and was constantly tight to him. So I think that I'd expect him to play tonight, and I expect him to be able to deal with Ciro Immobile pretty well. So interesting to see what Italy do. I think they should start Federico Chiesa, considering he made such an impact off the bench, and he's had very, very good seasons for Juventus. I thought Berardi was a bit quiet in that game, so I think they should inject some sort of pace into this side. I think Chiesa's the one to do it.
And Declan, if you were a betting man, who's your 50p going on in tonight's game?
It's tight. Been impressed by both sides. Lukaku's looked good so far this tournament as the main man up top for Belgium, but Italy looked a really well organised team. I would say probably Roberto Mancini's, in my opinion, the best coach still left, and obviously Enrique's Spain coach, but I just think Mancini's got that wee bit extra. And they just look so really hard to break down Italy, especially with Chiellini and Bonucci at the back. So, yeah, it's going to be tight. It's going to be very difficult because you're going to have real good quality players going up against each other. Again, like Sean said, I'd probably play Chiesa. I thought he was excellent when he came on against Austria, and he would probably, because our old defenders a wee bit an issue, but I think it just depends. At times, though, Belgium like to play out for the back a wee bit too much for me, and they get caught out quite a lot with Denayer and Boyata trying to take that wee step and get caught. So it's going to be difficult. I'd probably put my 50 pence in Italy, just because I like a Peroni and a pizza, but yeah, I'll go with it. I'll go with Italy tonight, but I think it's going to be a decent game. I just hope you don't build yourself up for two of the best teams and it's a stinker. So hopefully we get a good game of football out here.
Yeah, I would say,
I don't know if we could give ourselves credit for it, but Federico Chiesa does start for Italy, and big news: Kevin De Bruyne starts for Belgium. I think it was widely expected that he was going to miss out, but he does start. So does Jeremy Doku, who has been a very highly rated player in the Belgian Pro League this season. That's obviously without Eden Hazard there. So some pretty interesting changes for both sides. And De Bruyne starting's big for Belgium. It's got to be a mental boost as well, knowing that he'll be able to find Lukaku with just one chance.
All you've got to hope for Belgium is that he is actually fit and he's not just playing through the pain barrier, because all it will take is one knock, and that Italian team are full of strong, imposing players. So I'm sure he'll be the one that they target very early on. Like Declan, I enjoy a pizza, so I think Italy are going to take this one, but I think it could be an extra time and penalties effort. Let's look ahead to tomorrow's games before we get to the end of show quiz. England versus Ukraine, we just discussed there with Adam Pate from UKRFUT. Now, the head says England win this, but the heart is Ukrainian, and Ukraine go through. Well, Declan, go to you first.
No, it needs to be Ukraine. They were very good against Germany the other day. I thought the 2 goals were excellent, especially the Sterling goal was very well worked. But very impressed with Ukraine the other night too. Again, we were talking about Shaqiri earlier on. Yarmolenko's a guy in that Ukrainian team that can hurt defences and really turn it on when he needs to. So it'll be tight. Again, it's the first time I've saw England away from Wembley. I know you were talking about that earlier. The Olympico's a grand old stadium, so
great stadium.
We've experienced magic moments in there, so why can some of the Ukrainian fans hopefully will experience a magic moment? So I'll go 1-0 Ukraine with hopefully a dodgy penalty decision for one of the German referees.
Sean, we've already said it. It's got to be Ukraine, hasn't it?
I mean, aye. I mean, if I was putting money on it, I don't know if it'd be the same, but I think you've got to back Ukraine. It was fitting as well that their send-off to this game was at Hampden Park in Glasgow, and they can sort of take some of that Scottish spirit with them. And they'll have sort of 5 million additional fans for this game, so here's hoping.
We sent them some iron brew and some tunnocks, so let's hope that's enough to get them through. Now, the tie that probably has the most potential to be a great football game but isn't being widely discussed is Czech Republic versus Denmark. Now, Denmark, obviously, they're still playing on the emotional of what happened to Christian Eriksen earlier on in the tournament, but the Czech Republic have been one of these teams that's been the surprise package. Patrick Schick up front has been outstanding. I think, is that 4 goals he's got now in the tournament? He's definitely one that I reckon you'll end up seeing the links to him after this tournament's over. Yeah. And for me, it's one that is very hard to call. I think Czech Republic, if they turn up, they'll definitely give them a very good game. But Denmark just have that quality throughout the team. So I'm sitting on the fence. I'll call it a draw and then let the joy of penalties decide.
Yeah, I think that it'll be sort of defence versus attack, this one, because Czech Republic physically are very, very good, and we saw the way that they sort of just nullified that Dutch side, and then were, when it got down to 10 men, they sort of imposed themselves a bit more, but I think you saw the threat they had on the counters and with balls into the box for the likes of Schick, like you mentioned there. Whereas Denmark, statistically, they're the most attacking team at the tournament. They've spent the most time in the opposition third than any other team at Euro 2020 so far, which is a pretty impressive stat. And I mean, they just got out of their group with 1-1, so that's quite surprising, really. And they're also they take about 20 shots a game, which is the most in the tournament as well. So they'll definitely put Czech Republic under some pressure. But I think physically, the Czech Republic will be able to match them. And it's also, we were talking about this on our Euro show earlier in the week, that it's in Baku, and that's probably the worst atmosphere at the tournament so far. We've seen some great ones. It's a shame that it's not at somewhere that you can get a good amount of fans in, because you'd imagine that players aren't going to travel, fans aren't going to travel all that way. So that's a little bit of a shame, but I think the Czech Republic might just make the most of that atmosphere, the fact that there's no real fans to sort of get behind Denmark. They might just nullify them and nick something through the very clinical Schick. So I want to see Denmark get through, but I just have a sneaky feeling that Czech Republic might pull off another shot.
It's interesting you mentioned about the atmosphere, because I've got to say I think Hampden's been one of the worst for atmosphere as well.
Yeah,
I think it's been very, very poor.
We spoke about this on the Euro show as well, that I mean, it's great to see Scottish football on a stage like this, but it's also a wee bit embarrassing, I think. Like, Hampden is not, you look at some of these stadiums and it's just not a modern football stadium, is it? And I personally wanted us to stay at Hampden and win the Talks of Murrayfield and all that sort of stuff, but I think serious work's got to be done to Hampden, and especially when they're talking about the 2030 World Cup perhaps being in the UK. If at that point Hampden still looks as it looks now, it'll just be a really embarrassing look for Scottish football, I think. So work needs to be done, definitely.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. But let's go back to Denmark, Declan. Fantastic performance against Wales the other night, running out 4-0 victors. And they are a team that just seems to be hitting form at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, Wales looked decent early on in the tournament. They put in a really good performance against Italy, obviously. Coming out here on top, but getting through that group, well deserved. Obviously, Switzerland, Italy in the group, both teams still at this stage. But yeah, Denmark, very, very much so impressed by them. They tore Wales apart, and obviously Wales went down to 10 men later on in the game, but they just looked so clinical going forward at times in the game. But again, both well-organised football teams, very impressed by the Czech Republic against themselves in the opening game. And, that Holland team has a lot of quality in it. Again, I know there's a lot of personalities in it that don't always get on with each other, but on paper, everybody was fancying Holland to obviously put the Czech Republic out. The Czech Republic came through victors, so it will be tight. I think it will go probably extra time. So if you're going to ask me a prediction on that, I'd maybe say 2 each and decide, not in penalties, but in extra time. But both well-organised teams. I think that could be a really juicy game for the quarterfinals.
I definitely think it's one that people shouldn't sleep on. I think it will be a really good game. I fancied Denmark if I had to be pushed for it. And what would you say, Sean? He's kind of got a wee feeling about the Czechs.
might just nullify them enough. I think they're really well coached. I think we saw that against Scotland, and I expect them to maybe, like I said, my heart wants it to be Denmark, but I think people are maybe underestimating this Czech side as they've done throughout the tournament, really.
And I believe Spain actually just missed a sitter there, Declan, is that right? It's still
I'm
one
not
each.
Not too sure.
I just seen
too
some
invested in the
notifications
conversation,
come
Colin.
through.
I'm just
Too invested, I know.
Too invested in the Danish. Yep.
And that's just not out the Lidl bakery. But
No.
it is time now for the big finale. It is the quiz. Sean, remind us how last week went.
I won by the skin of my teeth on a tiebreaker that we both answered nowhere near the correct answer. But I think my questions were harder actually last week, so let's hope there's none of that.
So, Sean, as the defending champion, I'll give you the chance to either take set 1 or set 2. Which are you going to go for?
I usually go set 1 when I get to pick, but I'm going to go set 2, change it up this week.
Set 2, so that means Declan will go first tonight with set 1. Declan, first question. And if anyone hasn't seen this before, just before we get started, this is the Insomniac shootout quiz, done in the style of a penalty shootout. Declan will go first, and then Sean, and the winner will be decided on who's got the most right after 5. If a tie after 5, we do have the tiebreaker question. First of all, Declan, Switzerland won on penalties the other night, but who missed a penalty in the regulation 90 minutes?
Oh no. I know this laddie's name because somebody actually put out a tweet saying don't let him take penalties. I'm going to need to pass. Can't mind. I'll just take a guess. I'll just say Mbolo, but it's not him.
Sean, did you know?
I don't think I would have got it. It's another one. When you say it, I'll know it, but I don't know if I would have.
It was Ricardo Rodriguez. Ricardo Rodriguez missed the penalty. So this is your chance to go 1 up then, Sean. Name me one of the 2 players to receive a red card in the round of 16.
Who got sent off for Wales? Ethan Ampadu.
That wasn't the round of 16.
I think that's my answer now.
All right, okay, well, you could have had Matthias de Ligt or Danielson for Sweden. Just before we move on, that tackle from Danielson.
That was round the 16.
Oh, Wales was round the 16, aye.
Was Ampadu as well? I don't remember that.
Against Denmark.
Against
Denmark. I'm trying to get points, Colin.
Do you know what? I'll quickly look this one up. But whilst I'm doing that, discuss Danielson's red card for Sweden the other night.
It was a red card.
That was a horror tackle.
It was a bad challenge. And you saw the way his legs went. I don't know how anybody can say it wasn't a red card. I mean, that looked dangerous, man.
That was very, very dangerous. I mean, I know he had his eye on the ball, but for me... Who did you say, sorry?
Ethan Ampadu.
No, you're still wrong. It was Harry Wilson.
Harry Wilson.
It was. After all that.
So you don't get it anyway.
He did get sent
off.
He did get sent off.
He gets sent off in the group stage, didn't he? That's what I was thinking of. See, I knew you were wrong.
Right. But yeah, there was more than 2 as well. So there was faults all over the shop there, really.
So it's a straight red for you, Sean. Question 2. Declan, which company were announced this week as Wrexham's new sponsor?
Oh. Is this something to do with a celebrity type thing?
Mm-hmm.
Give him help.
And he's from where you're from as well. Oh, I don't know what the company's name is. Is it a Scott? Is it to do with Martin Compston, this one? Is this it? No, was there that?
Declan, I can't help you anymore. Sean's going to get
rid of it. Not a clue. Pass.
Sean?
TikTok.
It was TikTok.
Is it TikTok? Oh.
TikTok is Wrexham's new shirt sponsor for the new season. So, Sean, this is your chance to go 1-0 up. Leanne Crichton left Glasgow City this week, but to join which other SWPL side?
Motherwell.
It was Motherwell. She joined as a player coach for the new season. Sean goes 1-0 up. Now, Declan, this will see if you've been listening in previously, because I actually shouldn't have mentioned this because it was a question, but let's go for it anyway. Who was appointed the new Fulham manager this week?
Oh, I saw this in the news earlier. Oh, Jesus. I'm having a shocker, by the way. I was in Sky Sports News earlier on.
You're representing a Celtic state of mind here.
I know, I'm having an absolute shocker. My mind's just went totally blank. Parker's left. I need to just have a guess at some washed up football coach. Oh, Jesus, man. I need to pass as well.
Oh,
Can't mind.
Sean, put him out his misery.
It's Marco Silva.
That's right, the old Everton boss. That's right.
We were discussing that earlier on in the show. If you missed it, you can go back and watch it after we finish on A State of Mind. Sean, this is a chance to take a 2-0 lead here. Which brand was announced this week as Newcastle's new kit manufacturer?
Not a clue. Oh, I mean, the fact it must be something interesting, surely, if you're asking me. I don't know. Newcastle's new kit manufacturer. I don't know. I'll just say Nike, even though it's definitely not.
Declan?
I'll say Castore for a laugh, but I don't think it is.
It's Castore.
See, you're not going to ask me like a Rangers-linked question, so I discounted it.
It's not a. It's just a normal football podcast.
I mean, I know.
That was your chance to go 2-0 up. Let's see if Declan can make you pay for that. Question 4. Ophir Marciano left Hibs to join which side this week?
Feyenoord.
It is Feyenoord. 1 each after 4. Sean, this is your chance to take a 2-1 lead. Switzerland are currently playing Spain, but where is the game being held?
St. Petersburg.
It is St. Petersburg. I think we didn't actually mention that one earlier as well.
So that's well. It was me who said that in the show.
Well,
I didn't.
As long as you're listening to yourself, exactly. Declan, you really need this one. Otherwise, Sean will walk away with it. Which pundit who's been praised for their work at the Euros is the current Chelsea women's manager?
Oh, the only women pundit I know at the Euros is Alex Scott, so I just need to say her, but it's not her.
It's not Alex Scott. Sean?
Emma Hayes.
It is Emma Hayes.
That's right.
I mean, it's a bit of a foregone conclusion here, but let's see if Sean can wrap up with a commanding victory. Question 5. Hearts launched their new home kit with which charity being their main sponsor?
I don't know the exact name. It's MND Foundation, is it?
MND Scotland, I'd give you that one. Sean, a 3-1 victory this week is a bit more convincing than the week before. Let's hear your 15-second brag to Declan.
I mean, some of those questions were tough, but we both weren't on fire today, really. I mean, I thought of some of those answers. I knew some of his, and I wouldn't have got them as well. So, I mean, I knew Ricardo would be good, but it stuck in my mind. So, I thought that was a pretty well-fought game. But well-fought, I mean, we were both pretty poor, and I'm just back for me with it. So, aye.
Declan, we'll have to get you back on in a future episode to try and defend the honour of the state of politics and the Celtic state of mind.
I'll need to pay attention to Sky Sports News a wee bit more regularly the week before I come on.
Just before we wrap up, let's go ahead and let's see what your answers would have been for the tiebreaker question, because it's a shame to waste it. Leo Messi's set to sign a new deal for Barcelona. How many competitive games has he played for the club to date? I'll go to you first, John, since you won.
How many competitive games has Leo Messi played for Barcelona?
Yes.
Wow. When did he make his debut? Sort of 2004, 5.
Also, a big shout out to Jerry H in the chat, who got pretty much every single question right. He's either very good at Google or he's very knowledgeable.
That's what 16, 32, 48. I'm going to say 803.
803. Declan, what would you have went with?
I'm going to go 759 or something.
This is when I've got to do
somewhere in that bracket.
Yeah, so the correct answer is 778. So that would mean you at 803 were 25 off, and Declan, you said 759. Declan would have won. Declan would have won on the tiebreaker. If only he could get there.
If I had the Sky Day penalties there, I would have managed to get there. But, you know.
No, but Declan, thank you very much for joining us on today's show. Tell everyone that's watching where they can find you on socials and when you are next on A State of Mind.
So on socials, on Twitter is at Declan RMCC. State of Politics show runs every Tuesday, usually live. We're going to be a wee bit different format. We've got some good guests on, so if you get any ideas on guests or any questions, get them into us. And I'm usually on Axom every Thursday with Paul John and JP Mason. So that's where you can hear my dulcet tones.
And good luck to the rest of the teams, including Ukraine, who are still in the competition. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today on the Football Insomniac. Myself and Sean will be back next Friday with lots more to discuss, and it will be a final preview. The big final is next Sunday. We'll look ahead to the teams that will be in it. Thank you once again for joining us. If you are watching the games this weekend, do enjoy them. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next week.